Hi, this is Alan Chang from Launch Tabletop. If you're here because you're looking to learn how you can make your own die lines for your punchboard, a custom one, then this is the video for you. So what we're going to learn today is how you could do so using Adobe Illustrator. Don't worry, you don't have to learn a lot about Illustrator. The first part is making the die lines, and the second part is combining that with your artwork using whatever graphics program of your choice and bring that in to Illustrator to combine them to make your final artwork in PDF to upload to our Launch Lab platform. So let's get started. The very first thing you want to do is go into your project. You need to make sure that your punchboard component is configured. So in my case, I've just gone with the stock standard square small with laser cut or die cut. Doesn't really matter. The way that you make the die lines are exactly the same. And once you've saved this component, you want to download this template file. So the next thing you want to do, the quickest and simplest way, is to simply open the template file. So in this case, the front side, and you want to open that. Once you've opened this, because it already has all the lines in there, you'll see that in the swatches, all the spot color settings have already been set. And this is what the validation really needs, is the bleed line and the die line spot colors set up. Just for your information, you don't need to do this since we already have the swatches. But if you're creating one from scratch and you're not using a template, all you need to do is you need to create a swatch with a color type of spot color. The color itself doesn't matter as long as there's a name of cut line or cut or die line or die. They all work as long as there's a name with a spot color, as well as a bleed or a bleed line with a spot color. Again, colors don't matter. If you have these two, then as long as your lines are set with those colors, then the validation will be able to assess your die lines. What we're seeing here is a blank sheet with a square, and this square is the punchboard sheet itself. So what you'll be doing is creating die lines inside this sheet. The red represents the cutting area, the cut line, and then the purple represents the bleed. Okay, so now that we have established what we're going to be doing, the next thing that we want to do is to look at the artwork and the kind of shapes that we'll be making. So over here, this is where you'll defer to your favorite graphic program of your choice. In my case, it will be Photoshop. So what I'll do is I've already prepared a artwork that I want to bring in to Illustrator, and this is what it looks like. So to look at, we've got a image size. If we set this to millimeters, it will tell us that is about 38 mils with a resolution of about 300 pixels per inch. Bearing in mind that this 38 mils encompasses the whole area here, but in reality, and I've created a little black sort of masking thing just to cover up to show you what it will actually look like. The circle is actually in this area here. So even though it's 38 from edge to edge, this actually incorporates a certain amount of bleed that we want to cut. So this is really around a 30 mil token. So this is what we'll be working with. Now what you want to do is go and place your artwork. So in this case, this coin, I want to place that. If we have a look at the document values here, you'll see that it is 189 mils by 189 mils on the external. And since we're all working in millimeters, things should just be fine. This is already in 300 ppi, so we're fine. If you don't know what the difference between DPI and PPI, they're essentially one-to-one, but we won't go into the difference in this video. I might do another video detailing that. Also, just as a aside, if you want to learn more about why artworks require bleed and details about how to design with bleed in mind. I have a separate video about that you can look up in our YouTube channel as well. So we've already established that this has excess bleed and that what we really want is somewhere in here. So all I did was I clicked on the ellipsis and then I just clicked again, and I want to make a essentially a diameter, width and height, but the diameter is 30 mils. So once I've clicked yes, I can then set this. Make sure that you don't have anything there. Set the die line with the color of the die lines. Now the thickness of the stroke doesn't matter, but I typically like to set 0.25 just as an aesthetic thing. So once you've done that, you're more or less ready to go. You can then create many other ones. I'll actually show you another more complicated shape example, and also invariably the question will come up is how do you then create, if you want, the margin lines or even the bleed lines in this case. I'll show you how you can make a bleed line in a couple of ways. Because this shape is uniform, if you size it up to where the bleed line is, so that's 30, you want to at least have 3 mil bleed. Luckily in Illustrator you can actually do things like plus and then you can go 3, right? In this case it's actually 6 mils because it's 3 mils either side, so total growth of 6 mils. And then you want to then set this color to be the bleed line, and we're done. So you've got basically cut line, the bleed area there. Anything past the bleed line doesn't matter, but it's fine either way. And we're pretty much good to go. So notice how making a circle shape with a bleed line, expanding that is not very difficult. But let's have a look at what it might look like if it's a non-uniform shape, right? So let's just use the pen tool, yeah, and then just make a really sort of strange looking shape. Okay, so let's just say that this is your cut line that you've made in this shape. Well, if you were to then expand this, so expand this up, notice how it's not going to uniformly expand that really well. And you really don't want to be going in and messing with the Bezier curves. That's just asking for trouble, right? So another way, a very much easier way to do this is using an offset. So what you want to do, so I'm just going to move my camera across, is you go to path and then you go offset path. And then when you offset, you can give it a value. In this case, it'll be 3 mils. And you go, okay. Set that to the bleed line color. And we're good to go. You could also do negative offsets if you want to add in the Launch Tabletop's green margin line. You don't have to do margin lines for validation and for your own artwork. Margin lines is there as a good guide for artists and graphic designers to make sure that your text sits within a 3 mil margin, so 3 mil in, 3 mil out. Again, this separate video that I have that talks about drift and bleed, it does talk about margin as well, so you can watch that. Okay. So we've covered essentially how you make sort of funky shapes. So let's actually see a real example of a shape that you want. Okay, so now we've got this to start with. So how would I go about making this rounded bits all around this area here? The best way to do it is first start with all the primitive shapes that you want, and you can combine them essentially or merge them. First things I usually do is I like to lock this layer down. Then create a circle that's about the size of your image, and then you want to create these additional divot bits. So one way that you can make that is, strangely, you want to do it in a triangle shape with 3 sides, and then bring that down to sort of where you are happy with, where you want the cut to be. Let's just make it as, yeah, okay. And then you basically pull down this little circle-y knobs things, which will then give you that nice sort of ovalness to it. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes, then the rotation should be 360 divided by 5, 72 degrees rotation. So then you go rotate 72 and make that as a copy. And then let's place them. And then transform again. Transform, rotate. Okay. Okay, so last bit is you want to select all of these and go Shift M, and then you have this sort of smart shape builder tool, and basically you can just drag and say, oh, these are actually part of the same shape, and then just combine them together. So now that we have our basic shape, we basically just trace the outline of the object. But now what we want to do is we actually want to incorporate a little bit of that border in. So we use the same trick as before. So we go to path and we go offset the path. And you can offset this by, for me, aesthetically, probably 2 looks good. Yeah, I'll say 2. And then I go, okay. And I can delete the old one. Don't need that. So this essentially will become the final shape, the stuff that's inside of this cut zone. Still, same thing, you need to then create a bleed. So there we go, offset path, set that to 3 mils. Bleed lines always have to be 3. And we said okay, set that to bleed. And then you've got cut and bleed, and that all sits in, and it looks great. So let's, group this if you want, and place them how you wish, basically. So one other thing to note in place. So now let's move on. Let's move on to aligning your tokens. The thing that you want to pay particular attention to with alignment is between the cut lines. You want to make sure it has at least a 6 millimeter gap as well. So that seems perfectly acceptable. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment or jump on our Discord channel and ask questions there. And if you have things that you would like to see as video tutorials, please let me know and I'll do my best to provide informative content. Thank you for watching.